I'm Joshua, and I'm an INTP. And first and foremost, I would like to say thank you for viewing this video. The topic of this video will be on my videos. And what I will be saying in this video and explicate is the underlying goals and motives for the mode of communication that I use and why I make videos on YouTube, though I think I have covered some of these items in the introduction to my channel. Very really, I think that it would behoove me to explicate things in greater detail with further elucidation. And it's to say this, that there are several phenomenons that I see prominent in American culture that definitely gave me the impetus outside of just the suggestion of my INTJ friend to make videos on YouTube. I am not someone who is concerned with directly influencing the world. I talk about issues that are relevant and important and may be on the minds of many other individuals, but I try to cover these topics in a manner that is rationally centric, logically centric, and systematic in its makeup. For I am someone who is from the old school of thought and philosophy in terms of being systematic and rigorous in constructing knowledge and in the presentation of knowledge. For I have the thought and the school of one demonstrates rather than just one expresses what they know. For it is scrutiny that I build things to withstand, not to be easily ingested. So it's to say that the phenomenon, that is one thing that is embedded with introverted sensing that comes out in these videos. For it is my reading of Hegel, it is my reading of Schopenhauer, it is my reading of Nietzsche, it is my reading of Plato, it's my reading of Aristotle, it's my reading of the great tradition of philosophy that even inspired me to create and be concerned with knowledge and have a taste for epistemology outside of the innate one that comes by way of me being an INTP and a dominant introverted thinker. However, I will say on cognitive function tests, such as the celebrity types test, that I always test at 100% in introverted thinking. So I may be what people may consider extreme example of introverted thinking in many regards, but it's to say that it is the impression that I received from the old school of philosophy and my disappointment that philosophy, when it was taken from the heights and humanized, did not keep its rigor, and I come as a re-representation of the old frame of thought and modeling. And even when I write papers, I write them in the old language, I write them in the old systemization, and I do not model the new tenets of philosophy and the way that you find things written per se by thinkers such as Steven Pinker or Daniel Dennett or Rebecca Goldstein or Brian Greene, or they're not philosophers. Brian Greene is not a philosopher, but I am not the New Age and not in New Age thought and things of that nature. I am not from this age in terms of the way I communicate. I am very much a relic, and I do not care if people do not find that tenable or ingratiating. That's not my concern, for that's not my history and not something I care to change. Now, it's to say the reason that I take that stance and will be fairly staunch in it is for I notice several phenomena in American culture and one is very old and has seeped in increasingly since the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and particularly with the I can't put my finger on necessarily what the linchpin and the central moving agents are and this underlying tenet, but the tendency towards anti-intellectualism in American culture. There is a very real and prominent agent of anti-intellectualism in America, and it is where it's been as old as the 20s even, and the changing of self-help from being things that were concerned with character and creating sort of ethical and moral philosophical standpoints and precepts for people to use to develop character with a priori and a posteriori synthetic knowledge wedded within them to essentially point a person in the name of God and country towards a better self. How they went from that to being things that were more about practical aid and use and being in service of the layman's immediate experience, and trying to remove the dressing of the old thought and the old ways of doing things, for that they were too slow and not easily accessible and digestible for the reader. So be kind to the layman, essentially, and make things an easy sell and bid for him, because there is a very real tenet by way of capitalism and the consumer first and the customer is always right in making something easy for people. And you see that in the conception of the iPhone, and people love it because it has its very dexterous and friendly interface in its operation and systems. And I gotta admit, Steve Jobs was a genius for seeing that, and Steve Wozniak were geniuses for seeing that that is the way that you would make a computational system or a home computer system something that would be as widely popular and heavily influential or motivating in its consumption. So if you want to make a lot of money and you want to be extremely popular, that's how you should make your things. I do not care about monetizing my videos, and I do not want to be popular. I do want to stand as an antithesis to this tendency that is by way of the capitalistic mindset, insofar as consumer first and heavy consumerism, as in I am by way of the old school and introverted way of scope and maybe more Eastern tradition, and saying that you must struggle and you must be challenged. I'm not going to make it easy for you, and if you want it to be made easy, then don't watch what I'm doing, because I, one, care about the upholsion of the structure and integrity of things. One can see this as being pretentious. Fine, you can say that, but I don't find myself using words that are not easily understandable with some uses of context clues, or really that, yeah, if you, I don't know, whatever, you don't need to have a very big vocabulary to understand what it is I'm saying, because there are only, I think, just few words, unless I'm talking in an extremely technical sense about scientific things, that you really are going to be at a loss with what I'm saying. Though I do find that my words fall on deaf ears many of the times, and it is because I am so stringent and set and fixated on accurate syntactical representation and efficiency in language, and that is what it is, and I'm not changing. So that is, so you could take that for what it is, but I have very real reasons for being that way, other than just trying to make things difficult for people. Though I am, I guess, like Kierkegaard, insofar as that there are so many men and great figures of genius and thinkers who have made life easier for men, and I do not have such toys and such items of fancy for man to make things easier for him. So I guess that it is my job and my position to only make things harder. For what would man do if he had no challenge than to find challenge for himself? So what better capacity for me to fill than to present challenge for him and to always make him question and reconsider what he had once been comfortable with. This, I find, is my task rather than necessarily always making things easier. And it is because I do not find in America that we make things sufficiently challenging or engaging at the forefront. So it's not like that there is an abundance of material on YouTube for you to look at to get the spark notes or the tidbits or the summary standpoints of analyses or the basics of Jungian typology. You want the basics or the easiest things to pick up in nice little presentations, then go watch Michael Pierce. Don't watch me. And I even take and credit his videos and have exalted his work. So go look at his channel, not mine. It's like, that's not me. And I'm not going to do that. And so the tendency towards anti-intellectualism in American culture makes a very strong antithetical nature in me to where I say I am pro-intellectual and will always champion the old thought, and it is not to put philosophy at a height per se, but to put it at its proper station and make it accessible in such a way that the person grows from their accessing of the information. It is the very real tickling of the ears and the pouring of honey towards the individual and always making them feel affirmed and esteemed in whatever it is they're conceptualizing and conceiving, and making them feel as if they are capable and intellectually astute without any work per se, that I am fundamentally against. And it is to lead to this other phenomenon of the advent of the instant expert by way of YouTube and how-to videos that I will say with the greatest amount of expletive that I can say that I fucking hate. It was at a time, once upon a time, to where if somebody could make an opinion or state something, that they had some sort of training and background to them, or that they had gone through a sufficient amount of study and research or apprenticeship before they ever could produce a work. Now it is filled in so many places in education to where you should write a personal narrative essay or give your opinion about some great thinker or author when you're in the 5th grade, like Lord knows you got any clue about what John Steinbeck's philosophical tenets were in his works. You definitely can say something about it and what you think about it, to where what you think really ain't worth salt, because you have not transgressed or walked any true rugged road that is intellectualism. And these freaking rampant experts that are just popping up everywhere makes a great deal of bastardization and a great deal of misconceptions and contradictory and unhelpful bits of information just floating about the web. So if you want that, go watch that, but don't ask for that here. And it's this that I'm always against, because I do not, I don't think that one necessarily needs to have a PhD to be somebody who is well-informed or cannot lend a thoughtful opinion to something. But I do think that do not speak about Western philosophy if you have not read the canon of Western philosophy. Do not talk about, I would say, Jungian typology if you have not read Personality Types by Jung. I don't see where, even if you are like me and you search for originality and coming with a iconoclastic, in some senses, analysis of subject matter, you can't do that and get it off the ground if you haven't sufficiently studied the thing in of itself. And so I'm not trying to necessarily make it possible for anyone to just jump in the game, because I don't like that, because it leads to a great watering down and cheapening of the subject matter that I don't think should be there, because the point of personality theory was self-actualization, and it's not as if one going to the depths of themselves is something that is fun, without cost, and is not wrought with a great deal of difficulty and trauma. If you get freaked out and are laden with anxiety because there's a word you have to look up in the dictionary, God help you. I don't know if you'll ever be a real person or will have any sort of hardiness to you to withstand the winters of your own shadow and psyche. Like, you know, I mean, hey, I just gotta say how I see it. And so that is something that I just will not participate in. And it's not. And also, I think that very really, given the sudden popping up of expertise, that there is now a disavowal of expertise, that anyone thinks that they do not. I'm not. So as an INTP, I don't have authorities. I do not have authorities. And I will say, you know what, if I hear somebody who's supposed to be a supposed authority, if they say something that's logically inconsistent, I am not going to accept it unless it does jive or can be demonstrated to me how their position is logically consistent. If somebody can demonstrate how that position, or if they can demonstrate how that position is logically inconsistent, I will change my thoughts. I'm not going to be the first one to change my thoughts or just accept what the world gives to me. But that's the point of philosophy and dialectic and being a scientist. It's not like I have fidelity per se to any one framework or way of thinking, though I will be always logic first. Like, that's just my default. That is not even a default. That's the only way I can be, per se, and I don't really try to be any other way. But it's to say this, that given this sort of rampant propagation of experts just all about the place, really bad experts, people don't think that they do need to give credence to authorities or people who have gone through a great deal of training and apprenticeship and education on their subject matter, and that they can sit at the heights of philosophy and just really know what Nietzsche meant by this, even though they ain't read anything beyond good and evil, or thus spoke Zarathustra. And now they are suddenly Nietzschean scholars, and they don't know a thing about Schopenhauer, and they certainly haven't read Hegel, and they don't read Dostoevsky, and they have no other conception about Nietzsche or the influences of Nietzsche without reading Shakespeare or anything like that. So now they know what it is exactly that Nietzsche was thinking, and I find these people absolutely naive and insufferable in some regards, though they are plenty just about around everywhere in every coffee house that you go into. And I don't think I know necessarily what Nietzsche meant by certain things, but I do think I have a good idea in some regards, or what's most likely, and I don't think I got to these things without doing a great deal of reading and argumentation and reading of other sources that influenced Nietzsche and the relevant thoughts and philosophies and tenets that he was combating even in his own times. Like, I've read the papers of bishops and members of clergy that were specifically around the time of Nietzsche to try and get a taste, specifically within the German sphere, to get a taste for the decadence he was really trying to talk about and combating what ideas in Christianity he really didn't like, per se, so I could get a better understanding for what he was actually trying to say. Because, go figure, I want to understand what the man's saying, and that's just where I come from as an INTP, seeking understanding first. But I find that that's not what most people do, and I am an epistemologist, so I will not be kind to your knowledge structures and will be so dang erudite and skeptical of knowledge structures presented to me, or people's flippancy towards the sort of proper and sober perspective they should have for philosophers and thinkers. You don't understand Nietzsche on a summary level of analyses. You don't understand Jung at a summary level of analyses. You don't understand Hegel. You don't understand Heidegger. You don't understand Plato. Philosophy bites and things, they are great tools for getting one to take an interest in philosophy and great thinkers of the past. And, if you want to get a general context for Wittgenstein's thoughts and Russell's thoughts, then yeah, reading philosophy bites and things, or listening to philosophy bites and things, helps you get a general understanding per se that gives you a basis to plunge into their work. You don't get that general palate to suddenly think that you know something or that you have some expertise you didn't work for. You get it so that you can actually do the work and that you can maybe supersede or overcome some initial barriers and overly robust feedback loops in the information that may make it a bit difficult for people not of a certain intellectual variety that want to get into these things that probably couldn't by the way that they are written. Maybe there needs to be a philosophy bite for my channel per se, but I ain't going to be the one that makes it. I'll let somebody else do that, because that's not I don't find that there's not enough rigor in the world. I find that there's too little rigor in the world, and I don't find that there's not enough people that are going to the original sources and that are going to the original text and painting themselves to get an understanding of things. I find that there's too little of that, so I will be the antithesis of that and stand as the antithetical agent in the world, and if you don't like it, you don't like it, and I don't really care. But I just like to make the video so that I can explicate that, because as an INTP, I think I need to be completely honest in my expressions in what it is I'm really trying to do with things, per se. So the disavowal of expertise, the lack of expertise, the anti-intellectual cult, the anti-intellectual tendency in American culture, and the active deprecation and denigration of dialectic is the other thing. The fact that people feel that it is a pain to deal with the details of things, and lo and behold, an INTP is like the details, but the fact that people will not pain themselves. People won't pain themselves. People think that everything should just be painless, per se, and that if one does not actively deprecate and denigrate hard work, one actively avoids it in all manners. It's like, I don't want to work hard, just give me things, feed me, feed me, feed me, and don't make me think, don't challenge me, don't make me struggle, just don't do it, I'm an infant, have mercy on me. I ain't here to have mercy on you, man. I'm a thinker. Alright, I'm not, you probably wouldn't have been able to cuddle up to Nietzsche, per se, in his time. And I'm not saying I'm Nietzsche or anything like that. What I am saying is this, that, the egalitarian school of thought, I am egalitarian in many ways in my nature, per se, as in I think it's very necessary to be kind to other people and to have a general humanistic sentiment and love for my fellow man. But I could not have love for my fellow man if I did not force him, per se, to come to the ends of himself and give up some of the myopic and capricious and fickle tenets of his nature, or at the very least force him to seek out tools and be confronted with the elements of himself that are fairly just counterproductive in his development as a rational agent per se. That, like, I mean, I'm laughing because, you know, it's just, to me, egalitarian has really bastardized this insofar as that just making education available for all people does not mean that you do not challenge all people to become better. I do not understand. Nobody is perfect, even myself. There's philosophers that I read that are hard for me to read. There is problems that I do that are hard for me to do. I'm always looking for the hard things, and I'm always being confronted with my ignorance. I'm always being confronted with my limitations. I'm always being confronted with how little I know and how not so smart I am. Like, people tell me I'm smart, man, but, like, I swear to everything. Go look up the Poincaré conjecture and just, I challenge you to just go read some things and just say, oh yeah, like, I'm like Bernoulli, I'm like Euler, I'm like Gauss, I'm like Poincaré, I'm like these guys. Like, for reals, like, I swear to everything, I blame egalitarianism, because it gives people the idea that if they can cuddle up with their professors and sort of have a equality with them insofar as being able to relate to them and talk to them in a certain manner, that necessarily that they should be able to do that with ideas per se, or great thinkers. And great thinkers aren't like your university professor, your college professor, your high school teacher, or your middle school teacher, or whatever. It ain't like reading, I don't know, Spark Notes. That's the fact that this is a Sparks Note generation is even more reason for me to not be lenient in the presentation of rigor and analytical stringency, and using an efficiency and very strict manner of syntactical representation. Like, that ain't ever motivating me. These factors are never going to motivate me to make videos that could be popularly consumed, because I don't like most of the things that are in popular culture, and I don't like most of media. I hate the fact that when you watch the news, there is not a one single person that comes up with anything that's thoughtful or may challenge somebody to consider that there may be two sides to an issue that exist simultaneously with one another, that are fundamentally limited, that is going to force you to find some third position that may not actually give you a further elucidation, but may lead you on to an even greater quest that may take you out of whatever comfortable station you are in life, per se. Like, that, you know, surprisingly, that's how things were written, like, in Abraham Lincoln's time, really. The fact that the caucus and the debates now between presidents are never about the trading of thoughts and issues, but really just a continual circularization and jumping of mental gymnastics to avoid, in the full prominence of circular reasoning, to avoid just saying anything wrong. It's a joke to me. It's very much a joke to me, and I hate it. I really do hate it. And I will never, ever, 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 ever take and lend myself to these things. I have to stand for something more than what my culture is, per se. If I ever want to say that I love it, I have to be more than what it wants. It's like, to me, it goes a little something like this. People seem to not have a problem with overt and prolonged infantilism. That people very much, because we are, I think, in my vantage point, evolve things, and we have a tendency to be lazy and not like to work, that we do very much and will be so very content with being fed things and being given things and a cheap and yeah, the only thing I can say is cheap charity. It's just cheap charity. It is under the pretense of beneficence and good, but it is poison and cancer to the mind and the soul. Like, if you want to say that, the soul hungers for something that it will withstand the affronts of the winters, and no one ever gives thought and consideration that it took religious systems thousands and thousands of years to create the meaning structures that they did for them to be so sustainable insofar as powering nations for centuries and taking and confronting the facts of the irreconcilable and contentious differences in life, that knowledge and meaning aren't easy things to come by per se, and that if you think that the bite-sized bits and the easy accessible material is the better one, then man, yeah, you will find yourself very much in a Grand Inquisitor situation, that you will be the Grand Inquisitor yourself. And when Christ comes back to the world, you will be the very one to hang him and burn him and say that people don't want to think. People don't really want freedom. All they want is to be fed. They don't want what's hard. They don't want truly to be free. They fear it, and they chide it. They hate it, and they will hate you for forcing them to have freedom and having to think and work out their own salvation. That you did more harm by respecting them and giving them freedom than you would have been instead of slaving them and making them complete ideologues to a totalitarian regime by way of fattening them up and giving them just goodness and tasteful things to the ears. Like, I ain't gonna be that person, and don't ever ask me to be that person. And this is going to be the last video I'm going to make on something like this, and I won't use words to just be pretentious, but if a word fits, it's going there. And if you have to grab a dictionary, tough. Use Google. I don't care. But if that makes you not want to view my videos, then don't view them. But don't come to me about them, because I don't really care. So that's the last time, because that's not and it's not just to be a jerk. It's to say that that's not the space I'm trying to occupy, and not the reason or the why for these things in the first place. And stop trying to actively denigrate things and cheapen them to bring them down to your level. It's not as if things have to exist for your comfort and your safety necessarily. You do not find life by consistently trying to preserve yourself or ignoring your limitations or not being confronted with the ways that you are limited in what you don't know. I don't care if most people won't grab a dictionary and aren't going to look up every second word. It is not as if the narrow path is the easiest one or the one that's most traveled. It is not to say that I am any way the point, the truth, the way, and the life, but that there is a very real innate wisdom in the expression that there is a narrow road, and there will be those who will take the narrow path, and there will be those who take the wide path and will forever be swallowed up by all the things that will entice them and trap them either in a totalitarian regime or a nihilistic cynicism or just a nihilistic standpoint and fill them with cynicism and resentment. You can go and create meaning, and you can find knowledge and understanding. Maybe you find all it is that you can know is not that you know anything at all, but I swear that that is a better position in being than just some fool, really. But, you know, it is what it is, and I ain't here to tell people how to live. but don't tell me how to live either. And please do not talk to anybody. Don't talk to me about this issue any longer. So that is my video, and I'm waiting for the dislikes and the just distasteful comments to roll in. Said now.